Good evening, everybody, and welcome all my VIP fans and the brand to the very first installment of Bucket Full of Chicken Necks. And this is my week in review, a potpourri, if you will, of everything going on in the world of Vince Russo. We're going to cover sports entertainment, professional wrestling, pop culture, entertainment, music, everything that's going on in the world that's of interest to me. Now listen, I tried to review SmackDown. I really did. For the last 2 weeks, I sat in front of my television set for 2 hours, and I really tried to endure it. But I gotta tell you, after 2 weeks, I came to the conclusion that there was just no reason to watch this show. There was nothing going on in this show that was an added addition to Raw. If you sat through 3 hours of Raw, you don't need to sit down through 2 hours of SmackDown. So I had to come up with a new concept of what I could give you, the brand, to entertain you in this spot, and the Bucket Full of Chicken Necks is what I came up with. And speaking of SmackDown, it became official on Monday that SmackDown is going to be switched from Friday nights now to Thursday night. Does it matter? I gotta be honest with you. Does it really matter in the big scheme of things? I mean, at the end of the day, is there any reason in the world to watch SmackDown? Whether it's on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Tuesday, it doesn't matter. The show is horrible. And again, I apologize in advance for talking negatively about the WWE product. I'm sorry. There's not too much I enjoy. I love the talent roster. I love the young kids out there. I love all that. I enjoy writing about them. I enjoy doing research about them. But watching 5 hours of WWE programming a week is not my cup of tea. I don't enjoy it. It's not fun for me, so we're going to try this for a while. This is going to be much more, up my alley, things I want to talk about, things I'm excited about. I'm going to bring guests on the show, here and there. A guest is going to pop in. I'll cover everything that's pyro and ballyhoo with him or her, whoever it may happen to be, and we're just going to have fun. I'm not going to suffer through 2 hours of SmackDown. We're here to have fun. And speaking of Raw, which I had already talked about before, obviously I'm not the only one who feels the way I do about the product. Because this past Monday night, the Raw rating was 2.88. It was down 5% from last week's 3.04. And here's the important thing. Raw fell below 4 million viewers for the first time in 3 months. And on top of that, a year ago, Raw was at a 3.07 compared to this week's 2.88. Now again, I've made my feelings be known about the product. Obviously these ratings are not going up. Because if these ratings were going up, then I'm wrong and everybody else is right. But it seems that a lot of people have the same sentiment I do about this show. And less people are watching. And don't get me wrong. As long as the WWE still has about 4 million people watching, it's going to be 3 hours. They're going to take that paycheck from USA Network. It doesn't matter. But my question is, if the show were 2 hours, and if you were able to put focus on the show and pay attention to detail and not have matches go through commercial breaks, could that 4 million a week be 5 million? Or could it maybe be 6 million? I think so. But under the current structure, that's just not going to happen. You're not going to entertain anybody on a Monday night for 3 hours. And I'm tired of beating that drum, so I'm going to move on. Listen, a lot of TNA news this past week and some things I want to address. And I've addressed them, on Pyro and Ballyhoo. I want to talk about them a little further right now. The first thing is, I was reading early on Monday that apparently Velvet Sky, she either took her TNA address off her Twitter account or her Facebook, or somewhere along the lines, she kind of distanced herself from TNA for the moment. Now listen, I don't know exactly what that means. That's nothing but speculation. But I do know this. Having worked with Velvet Sky, this is one person that TNA management cannot afford to lose. This is homegrown talent that's been with TNA for a very long time and is hands down the hottest girl in the wrestling business. So I hope her taking the TNA name away from Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is Velvet did, I don't know why she did it, but I hope it doesn't mean that she's leaving TNA, because I'm telling you, that won't be good for TNA. They got enough problems right now. We're going to get into that, but losing Velvet Sky, I don't think that's a good idea. Also, losing Bully Ray is not only not a good idea, very, very, very bad idea. If everything I'm reading is true, and Bully hasn't renewed his contract, and he was telling the boys in the locker room that he didn't expect to sign an extension with TNA, that means Bully Ray may be gone from TNA. That's a huge mistake, ladies and gentlemen. We're not talking about AJ. AJ Styles was a huge loss. AJ Styles was the face of TNA. No doubt about that. But Bully Ray is the locker room leader. Bully Ray is the backbone of that company and has been for some time, especially since the exit of Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. Bully Ray is the guy that the younger guys can go to. They trust. They go to him for advice. He carries himself as a leader. Now, with all the chaos going on behind the scenes of that company, you're going to tell me there's a chance that you may take the leader out of that equation? You know, I know everything is dollars and cents with TNA these days. I understand that completely. And I understand they got to chop to save some money. I get it. But Bully Ray, legitimately your most valuable player on that roster? You know, again, if true, I don't know if it is. I hope it's a work. You know, I hope TNA goes to a new network and Bully Ray is the first one out the curtain. I really do. But if it's true and the rumors are true and there may not be a Bully Ray in TNA, that's going to be devastating to TNA as far as I'm concerned. Now, good news, bad news. You know, good news is this week, you know, the story came out that TNA is negotiating with Discovery Channel's Velocity. Great. Another home for TNA. And I've been on my soapbox for the last month saying, get the hell away from Spike TV. Spike is useless. Spike will never do you any good. It's a bad marriage. Somebody's got to leave. Get out of the bad marriage. I've said that all along. But now, here's the situation I'm reading about this Velocity. I'm reading that the reach of the audience is half of what it was at Spike TV. But here's the important thing. From what I understand, Velocity is only going to pay TNA 25% of what Spike is paying them as the programming fee. I don't know how TNA makes it on that, because you got to remember this too. They now have an agency brokering their deal. The agency's going to get their commission. It's probably a 10% commission. So if they get 25% of what they got from Spike, and then the agency is going to take another 10%, what's left for TNA to work with? They're already cutting office staff right and left. I know some of my friends there reached out to me this week that they will let go. They're making the cuts. But if they're going to be working off of 25% of what they're used to, I don't know how they do it. And again, none of this is confirmed. Let me set that straight. I'm reading this like everybody else. I'm looking into this like everybody else. So hopefully this isn't the case. And TNA can find themselves a good, healthy network to continue on. Because one wrestling company is not good for business. TNA needs to be in the picture as far as the wrestling fans and myself are concerned. I want to step away now on Monday from wrestling. I want to go to the Emmy Awards because I want to say this. Listen, it's been a couple of weeks since Robin Williams committed suicide. And to be quite honest with you, I'm still struggling with this. It still breaks my heart. I can't wrap my head around, somebody that brought joy and happiness and smiles to the faces of millions, and how unhappy and miserable the guy was, in his room by himself. I'm really having a hard time dealing with that. And maybe it's because I deal with depression. I go in and out, man. I really do. That's how I am. That's what I suffer with. And, this has really been a very hard pill for me to swallow with the Robin Williams suicide. But, this Monday night, man, Billy Crystal, class act. They did it right at the Emmys. There was a tribute to Robin Williams. Very, very well done. Very heartfelt. And, the man got his just due. And again, I'm not going to get into anything like that, but, I hope Robin Williams is in a much better place now. I hope he's happy now, because the man deserved peace. And, again, hats off to the Emmys. Hats off to Billy Crystal. Very, very well done. I also want to talk about Tuesday. Let's go to Tuesday. Chelsea Handler said her goodbye to the E! Channel. Chelsea Handler was the host of Chelsea Lately. It's been on the E! Network for the past 7 years. She had her last show on Tuesday. Now she's moving to Netflix, where she's going to be starting her own show in 2016. I wrote an article about this as well on the site, so I don't want to get into it that heavily. I was a fan of Chelsea Handler. I was a fan of her show. I wasn't really sure why, but this is what I do know about Chelsea Handler. From everything I read about this woman, she is the greatest boss on the face of the planet. People want to work for her. People love her. She is generous. She brings her crew on vacations. She treats her writing staff like gold. And I think it was this that really gave me all the respect in the world for this woman. Because in entertainment, it doesn't work that way. And this is really outside of the norm, that a star of their own show for 7 years isn't standoffish and isn't standing high and mighty above the rest. So, that makes me like Chelsea as a human being and like her as an individual. And that's why I will continue to support her. We turn to Wednesday now, and I got to tell you, one of my fans on Twitter, they sent me a link to Paige's wrestling family and a documentary that was shot about her family over in England a couple of years ago. It was called Fighting with My Family. This documentary was absolutely unbelievable. If you want to understand why Paige is a star and why she is a good worker, and from everything I hear, one of the nicest people you ever want to meet, you want to watch this documentary, Fighting with My Family. I loved sitting there for 45 minutes and just learning about, Paige's mother and father, in the wrestling business, running their own promotion. Both of them are wrestlers. Her two brothers are wrestlers. They love this sport so much and are so committed to it. It's absolutely a breath of fresh air and totally unbelievable. The sacrifices they've made in their lives to keep their little promotion going in Norwich, England was unbelievable to me. It really tugged at my heartstrings. And I got to tell you, man, there's this one scene, where Paige leaves for the WWE. She leaves her family in England and goes to Florida. She goes to the training center where they're going to start her off. And man, I got to tell you, I cried my eyes out over here like Joe Sissy Mary. It was so touching to see Paige leave her family and to feel the love that family had with each other. It tore my heart out. And man, I was a fan of Paige before. But watching that, I love this girl, man. The family and the roots and the love of wrestling and the sacrifice. And here's another thing. This is where those in charge don't get it and they don't understand. If you watch this documentary, I have a hard problem saying that. Documentary. Tomato, documentary, Fighting with My Family. You will love this family. And Paige has an older brother. His name is Zach. And Zach has been trying just as hard as Paige to get a developmental deal with WWE. As a matter of fact, he went to two tryouts and they sent him away both times. For crying out loud, do you guys not see that there's a story here? They sent the guy home because he didn't have a six-pack. Does a six-pack matter here? Can you not see there's a real story here with Paige's entire family? This is a cast of characters, man. This is primetime TV. This is money. How could anybody in the WWE who has seen this, how could they not pick that up? Sign the whole freaking family. Bring Zach in. Are you kidding me? Put them on Monday night instead of what we had. I don't even know what the El Matadors were on Monday night. I wouldn't rather see this than the El Matadors. Come on, man. Get a clue. Look at this. Bring her brother in. Do something with this. That's why I get so frustrated. That's creative, man. If you haven't seen that documentary and you don't get it, you're a freaking idiot. Jake Roberts is in the hospital. Jake has double pneumonia. Again, my thoughts, prayers out to Jake Roberts. DDP has done a unbelievable job in helping both Jake and Scott Hall turn their lives around. Jake is sick. He's got double pneumonia. The story is that his doctor told him to stay home and rest up. But, the wrestler in Jake, he had to get to that next town for that next show. And in traveling, he got really sick. So, Jake is in the hospital resting. All my wishes and prayers out to Jake Roberts, and I hope all of the brand, say a little prayer for Jake tonight as well. I gotta say this. I gotta talk about this. I gotta bring it up. Okay? I haven't talked about it before anywhere. I'm talking about Double J's Global Force Wrestling. Listen, Jeff Jarrett is not talking to me. Okay, let me make that clear. I have been friends with Jeff for 20 years. Jeff is upset with me. I'm not sure why. I can only guess. I believe the reason Jeff is upset with me is because when TNA brought me on as a consultant and Jeff was still working there, they told me that I couldn't tell anybody or the gig was up, so I couldn't tell my friend Jeff, but I later found out through John Gaborick that Jeff accidentally found out that I was working as a consultant while he was still at TNA. So I think that's where Jeff's heat is with me. Just so you know, I tried to reach out to Jeff. I apologized to Jeff. I explained to him it wasn't up to me. I would have had no problem telling you I was working for TNA, but it wasn't up to me. So, I've tried to reach out. I've heard nothing back. But this is business. This is a show. I'm here to tell you the truth, to give you the inside look of professional wrestling and give you my feelings and opinions, and that's exactly what they are. They're just my opinions. And my opinion is this. For as successful as I want Jeff Jarrett's Global Force Wrestling to be, and I do want it to be successful. Listen, I love Jeff's family. Jeff's supporting 5 kids. Jeff and Karen are supporting 5 kids, okay? You don't think I'm not rooting for this guy? Of course I'm rooting for this guy. Jeff really fell on hardship with TNA. It was his baby. It was his brainchild. He got the backer. It was all Jeff Jarrett, and then he lost it, and it became Dixie Carter's. Hey, man, I feel for him for that. I really, really do. So, if he has the opportunity to go and do this again, and maybe do it the right way and let it be successful, man, I wish him all the luck in the world. But I got to say this, for the last 6 months, we've been reading, Jeff has signed an agreement with this company in Australia and this company in Japan and this company in Germany and this company in the UK, and all these partnerships between Global Force Wrestling and all these organizations around the world. And you know what? That's all well and good. But until there's a television deal and until the fans are seeing Global Force Wrestling, truthfully, it really doesn't exist. It's really nothing but a concept. So, again, I applaud Jeff for traveling all over the world, partnering with all these companies, really trying to build something. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Jeff getting a television deal. And, here's my concern for him. Seeing with what TNA went through and them trying to get a deal, and they've been in business for a dozen years. They've been in business for 12 years, and they're having a difficult time finding a network. Well, here you've got a startup. I don't know. What are their chances? What are their odds? Again, for Jeff's sake, for Karen's sake, the family's sake, the wrestling business sake, all the wrestling we can have is better for business. There's more for us to talk about. There's more for us to see. There's more for us to compare, and everybody makes more money. I'm all for that. But at the end of the day, you gotta have TV. And until you get that TV, it's a concept. And that's what it is right now. TNA's ratings, this past Thursday night, they went up a tick, but they're still below $1 million. Again, this is not TNA's fault. There's no network. I'm not even going to say on this planet. There's no network in the universe. If there's people out there listening to this show in Uranus and Pluto and Mars and Venus, and there are television networks on those planets, there's no television network in the galaxy. That changes the day of a show in a week and then doesn't promote it. Nobody does that. Nobody. So while TNA was growing their ratings and even got up to like 1.3, 1.4 million people, boom, last week they knocked back below 900,000. This week a little over 900,000. It's not their fault. Spike sucks. It's that simple. USA Network would have never in a million years pulled a deal like this. Never. It's ridiculous. It's Mickey Mouse programming, and it's a joke. And TNA will build their audience back up when people realize that they're there on Wednesday night. But then, you got to ask yourself the question, if they go to this philosophy, is the night going to move again? And do people have to find them again? All of that is just stuff that, TNA is working with and they're going to have to overcome. But here's another thing, man. This I kind of put on TNA a little. I was reading online the other day that Bobby Lashley, their champion, is going to be missing dates so he can go fight for Bellator. Listen, unless you have a deal with Spike TV and you're sending Bobby Lashley, your world champion, over there to them to play nice with them, as long as there's a deal with Spike TV and they're going to go beyond the end of the year, why are you doing this? If Spike TV has every intention of dropping you at the end of the year, why are you kissing their backside by giving them your champion and taking him off of your TV? That's asinine. That's ridiculous. Screw Spike TV. As I said, I hope I'm wrong. I hope you guys are working together. I hope Spike, has decided to go beyond the end of the year, and that's why you're giving him Bobby Lashley. One hand washes the other, both hands wash the face. I've said that a million times. But if you're doing this to kiss up to Spike in hopes of them renewing you, you're absolutely out of your mind, because you're going to kill your show without the champion on it. It's that simple. So again, not being there, not knowing the facts, I don't know. But if you're doing this in an effort to kiss Spike's backside, bad move. Couple more things we're going to talk about here. See how much more fun this is than me sitting there about the SmackDown and this useless match and that useless match. This is better. WWE Magazine went under. Yesterday was the last official day, and I got to tell you, it bothered me. This is where I really officially started my professional career in wrestling. As a freelance writer for the WWE Magazine back in 93 or 94, somewhere back then. It's where I got my start. My whole time that I was working at WWE, even when I was writing the television, I was still doing the magazine. I was still editor of the magazine. You know, it always had a soft spot in my heart. And I think this is a damn shame. It was coming, you know, with the worldwide interweb. You knew it was coming. Nobody looks at magazines anymore. I get it. But man, it's really, really sad. And I got to tell you, perfect timing for me to bring my buddy, Keith Elliott Greenberg, on the show on Wednesday. Keith is a wrestling aficionado, historian. He was writing for the WWE before I even got there. That's how far back, you know, Keith goes. Keith wrote the autobiography of Ric Flair, Freddie Blassie, Jesse Ventura. He really knew these guys inside and out and could tell you about the very early days of the WWE Magazine. And even though I didn't plan it this way, it looks like it's going to work out this way. And I think it's a great time to have Keith on the show so you could hear Keith's insight. Keith wrote the Iron Sheik's autobiography. You don't think Keith Elliott Greenberg's going to have some stories between the Iron Sheik and Ric Flair, Freddie Blassie, Jesse Ventura? Are you kidding me? Superstar Billy Graham, he wrote that autobiography. And Superstar's health is not the best right now, too. We should throw out some prayers for him, also along with Jake Roberts. Okay, two more things I want to talk about. The last one is, the one before the last one is this. I wrote a column for the VIP section about there being, a shooter in the grassy knoll that may have wounded TNA, but may have wounded them, mind you, because of what they did to him. Let me make that clear. So it was, in my opinion, a little bit of payback, a little bit of revenge. I don't want to get into that here. That was for the VIPs. I want to keep that special for you guys. But, what I will say is this. People that blame Hogan and Bischoff for the demise of TNA, you're wrong. That is absolutely wrong. And listen, I'm not going to be Joe Phony Baloney over here. I wasn't best friends with Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. I had to work at my relationship with them. We didn't always see eye to eye, but we were professionals and we acted like professionals. But I can say this firsthand. Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan wanted TNA to succeed just as much as anybody else. And they worked just as hard as anybody else. That's a fact. I worked with Eric. Eric was giving TNA his full effort. And again, these people that want to throw the stones at Hulk Hogan and Eric, no, throw the stones at Dixie Carter if you have a problem. Because first of all, Dixie hired Hogan and Bischoff. None of us know what they got. We don't know how much money they were making. We don't know if Dixie made that money back in the show that Eric helped develop for Spike. Or we don't know if Dixie made that money back in the deals that Hulk Hogan may have gotten overseas. We don't know those numbers. I don't know those numbers. For all intents and purposes, they may have made their money back for the company. I don't know. But I'll tell you this right now. Holding Hogan and Bischoff responsible for the demise of TNA, it's just like holding me responsible. If you're going to blame them, lump me in there too and blame the three of us. At the end of the day, it all begins and starts at the top with the boss. Dixie hired Hogan and Bischoff. Dixie gave Hogan and Bischoff contract extensions. So if Dixie wasn't getting the bang for her buck and Dixie wasn't making her money back, but she continued to pay them, that's not on Hogan and Bischoff. And Hogan and Bischoff were getting paid for their ideas and opinions. That's what Dixie was paying them for. So they instituted their ideas and opinions, whether right or wrong. That was the job they were getting paid for. You know, I swear that the funny thing with me is, while I was at the WWE, I never got blamed for anything. You know why? Vince wouldn't allow it. Vince would have never let anybody say, oh yeah, Raw sucked Monday night. That was Russo's fault. He wrote it. Vince McMahon would have never, ever done that. Vince McMahon had my back the entire time I was there. When I was with WCW and when I was with TNA, nobody stood up and took that responsibility like Vince did. Nobody. Nobody said, yes, I'm in charge. That was my decision. I will live and die by it. Nobody. So when they start pointing the fingers at Vince Russo and at Eric and at Hulk Hogan and at all these people, that's because there's nobody there having our backs and nobody there saying, no, you know what? I hired those people. This is what I hired them for. This is what I brought to the table. If you don't think it was a good decision, then that's on me, not on them. They were nothing more than employees. So I want to get that out, you know, and again, I'm not best friends with Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan, but they worked at TNA. I want to make that clear. They worked. They were in the trenches like everybody else. And I just wanted to get that off my chest. Here's the last thing I'm going to end with. Look, we're 31 minutes in. I couldn't give you 31 minutes out of SmackDown. I was lucky if I could talk for 15 minutes. I was stretching and stretching and stretching. I'm 31 minutes in here. I don't even have a guest. If I had a guest here, we'd probably be at the 40-minute mark. Who knows? This is better for you. Bucket full of chicken necks. This is what it's all about. Here's the last thing I got to talk about. Britney Spears' father discovered a tape was out there of Britney's boyfriend of 18 months cheating on her. And Jamie Spears, her father, bought the tape so it wouldn't go public and his daughter wouldn't be humiliated and scrutinized. He showed the tape to Britney, and right then and there, Britney ended it. 18 months relationship over. I gotta ask you this, bro. How could anybody in their right mind cheat on a Britney Spears? You're going out with Britney Spears for 18 freaking months and you're going to cheat on her with some other chick? First of all, what could this chick possibly look like that you're going to cheat on her when you're dating Britney Spears? You know, I got a lot of feedback on Twitter today. People telling me that, oh, Britney doesn't look the same now as she did 10 years ago. Are you freaking nuts? Go look at the pictures online of Britney Spears performing in Las Vegas. Are you nuts? Are you kidding me? She's still to this day a knockout. Gorgeous. And this bozo, 18 months, goes out and cheats on Britney Spears. And bro, what about the fortune? What about the money? The guy never has to work another day in her life. He could be her manager or her road agent, whatever he wants to be for the day. The guy's got it made. And he goes out and fools around with some hoochie coochie and she ends the relationship. Now what has he got? He's got nothing now. How anybody, any man in their right mind could cheat on a Britney Spears is beyond my wildest imagination. And listen, I've imagined to work. I've worked myself into a sweat here. I'm sweating right now. I stink. I smell. You drew sweat from me. This was very emotional for me, everything that we talked about here. I brought you through the entire gamut for the week, and now I'm sweating. Now I got to go take a shower. But I do this because you're the brand, because you are the VIP members, because you are the people that support me. And I told you, every single week I'm going to give you my all, because all I want you to do is at the end of the day, be entertained, and have fun, because that's all I ever wanted from the wrestling business. So I will be back Monday night with the Raw review. I'm going to fall to my knees and put my hands together and pray to my God that I got a DVR on Monday. Oh, I am so happy. Then on Wednesday, a lot coming up. I told you, Keith Elliott Greenberg, a WWE historian, a world famous author. Look him up on Wikipedia. Wrote a book about John Lennon's very last day. A New York Times bestseller. We're going to talk about the Beatles. I'm real excited about that. And not only this, I'm going to tell you this. This Razor Fist is coming on the show on Wednesday. He's already given me a list of the things that he wants to cover. And I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to give you a little hint because you're the brand. Razor Fist wants to talk about certain things and certain individuals that are never brought up here, that I never speak about for certain reasons. But listen, I'm all for the freedom of speech. If Razor Fist wants to talk about so-and-so, I'm going to allow Razor Fist to talk about so-and-so. I can't control Razor Fist. I can only control Vince Russo. So he's telling me he's going to come on this show, and he's planning on opening up all kinds of Pandora's boxes. Now, again, when I put his stuff up online, and I hope you've seen some of his videos, I've said, listen, this is not necessarily the opinion of Vince Russo. This Razor Fist has his own opinions. I ain't going to fight this guy's fight. I got enough trouble fighting my fight. But there is the morbid curiosity on my part to see what he's going to discuss. There is the morbid curiosity on my part to see what he's going to discuss. So we're going to have dual guests on the podcast, The Swerve, on Wednesday night, two totally different people. One's a lunatic. One's out of his mind. One doesn't care what he says. The other one, he'll tell you everything you want to know about WWE, about the history, about the magazine, about Flair, about Graham, about Blassie, about Ventura, about the Sheik, everything. Keith is a historian. So we got a lot going on this week right here with the brand. Again, I appreciate your support. I will see you again Monday night when I review Raw. For now, good night, everybody.